Hello everyone, welcome to Viewers, Comments and Questions on Monday the 13th of October. Mick here, hello, I hope you can see me and hear me. Dan's not here this week, he's got some gig rig stuff to attend to, he's been held up so he won't be here. So it's just me. Let me just turn this off. Loads of super chats in this week. BV, thank you so much for moderating and dealing with all the super chats coming in. I've turned them off so that we can get through them all. And just before we begin, have a look at that. Come on. Come on. Not three bad. It's done. And there is a video coming up. Anyway. For those of you watching in black and white, my 1965 ES345 345 now has a Bigsby vibrato, which I'm very pleased about. Did make a video, so there we are. Looks killer, says Todd Roy. Hey Todd, good to hear from you, buddy. I've got new glasses, right, so we'll see how we get on. Sean Patrick Watkins is in, Gordon Neal is in, Chris Matthews is in, Robert Eboy is in, Matt Swanton, hey Matt. Richard Pribenow, how are you Richard? Good to hear from you. Zoot Allure. Thomas Eichinger, Chris Costabile, just trying to figure out where the focus point is. Andreas Johansson, James Blessed. Eagle Ray Rob is in, hey Rob, how are you? Johnny T. Watch your head, Mick, says Simon VRDJ. I know, the voice mic is a little lower than usual, so... Anyway. That is as it is, and I managed to walk into it. Largely because of reduced peripheral vision, right? Anyway, bloody glasses. Bonk, says Non-Aligned. And so I stopped. Needs more 2 rock, says, says, and so I stopped. Hello. John Channing is in. Mark Gallagher is in. Where is Dan? Dan is doing gig rig stuff. He's been held up, so he couldn't get here on time. Sometimes he has to do things that he can't really say no to, and sometimes those things take a bit longer than you would hope. So I'm sure he's having good fun anyway. Brian Carpenter, Ian Bogle, Michael Koenig, Tim Mace Manson. Oh, I don't know if these glasses are going to work. Good. Simon VRDJ, Jason Horrick. Lots of lovely, lovely friends. And thanks again to BV for moderating. Okay. The gentle sound of crunching is Rosie on the floor, who has a lamb braid. Yeah, there we are. Lucky dog. Lucky dog. So we'll get into the super chats. Got quite a lot to get through. Oh man, this is so weird. Got quite a lot to get through. I mean, I am just going to do one thing. Which will be that. Don't know what happened on Friday's episode. We had something just took over and all the sounds were epically brilliant, or we thought they were epically brilliant, and that seemed to get reflected in the comments as well. So thanks for all your comments from Friday's vid. I rather suspect the wait list for the Nucleo reverb got a bit longer. Ouch. Okay, super chats this week then. Let's see who's in. Oh my goodness me, we've got lots and lots and lots. I'm just going to check that I've turned them off. Yeah, so if you super chatted up to Rygor, I think is the last one. Oh no, Michael Koenig. Michael Koenig, or Koenig, I don't know how to say it. Anyway, so we'll get into the super chats. Who's in first this week? First in is Chris. Nope. It is Johnny T. Johnny, how are you? He says, what are your thoughts on the Warm Audio, Tube Squealer and Warm Drive? I'm intrigued by Warm Audio, I have to say. Certainly their studio gear looks really lovely. I hope it's not too, whatever to say, you know, cost-effective versions of classics. taking significant design and styling cues from those classics. Dan and I can be a bit sniffy about that from time to time, just because, you know, we feel that those designs are, you know, should stay with the original brands, but the world has moved on and maybe you don't care too much about that. But certainly they look great. They look great. I haven't heard that they do a Centaur Clon type one, and I guess they are doing other type ones as well. So haven't heard any. We should have a listen. Heaven knows these circuits aren't that difficult to clone. So, or at least be inspired by. What are we going to say that keeps us all happy? In any case, I haven't heard them, and of course we should. So yeah, quite keen to hear their studio gear as well, actually. Chris Turner. Hey Chris, how are you, buddy? Good to hear from you. He says, I went into a shop looking for a T-type guitar. I ended up leaving with a Strandberg Essentials headless guitar in pink, no less. Is there any gear you thought you wouldn't like but ended up loving? They're quite compelling, aren't they, the Strandbergs? A couple of people have brought them to experience days. We had a great experience day on Friday. Thank you so much to everyone who came and had a good day. It was really, really, really good fun. Like loud guitar all afternoon, and a few pennies dropping, I think, amongst the attendees. People going, oh, I actually understand what you're bloody talking about now. So that was good. Yeah, wouldn't like but ended up loving. Yeah, the CXM Reverb, I want to say, is because regular viewers will know I'm not a huge fan of digital stuff, and I thought it would be one of those things where you're like, oh wow, this is like a real, ooh, I love this, you know, instant gratification. Open it on Christmas morning, completely fall in love, and you're going to be BFFs forever, or BFs forever. But actually I can't take it off my pedal board, and it's been God knows how many years now. So that Les Paul, never liked Les Pauls when I was younger, and then ended up with the gold top, with this gold top. Which just is a remarkable guitar. I bought it off Neville Martin, who I used to work with on Guitarist magazine. And it's a remarkable guitar. My number one guitar is the old Strat. This became number two guitar, and if I go to a gig, I'd usually take the Strat and this. And it's just been knocked into third place by the 345. So yeah, good to try stuff, isn't it? Good to try stuff. And move along. Well, let us know how you get on with the Strandberg anyway. Ergonomically, they're just bonkers. And by bonkers, I mean very different from the kind of thing that we're used to. So, yeah, I hope you love it. I hope it does the thing that you want it to do. I just can't get my head around not having a thing on the end there. But let me just make sure everything is okay. Everything is okay. Daniel Mincher says, afternoon gang, what have I missed? Not much, to be fair. Danielle Williams is saying Vodafone have had some outage apparently, so she didn't think she'd be here, and maybe hopefully those of you experiencing mobile phone outage are here. Yeah, good. The neck carve is mental, says Oliver Boysen. Yeah, he's referring to the Strandbergs, and they've got this real significant V. There are some early 20th century acoustic guitars that are like that as well. I think it goes that, and please tell me if I'm talking cobblers, but as I understood it, early Hawaiian guitars, that's to say guitars you play across your lap, had square necks because you weren't ever going to put your hand on the bottom of them. And then when people started playing Spanish guitar, ES, electric Spanish, or Spanish guitar, i.e. upright like this, they put a very simple V on them so you could put your hand around it. Now, I don't know if that is actually true, but it's good to make up lies, isn't it? Let me know what you think about that story. But yeah, the Strandbergs are like that, just like a V. Quite comfortable, weirdly. James Bless says lots of ISPs have had downtime today. Maybe it's because it's the 13th. Yeah. And bless you, Dormant. Mick, always a trooper on his lonesome today. Leg end. Thank you. Well, we know that a lot of people really like tuning in, you know, whether it's to watch and listen or just to listen or have something on in the background while they're doing a dinner or whatever, or waking up and having a coffee wherever you are in the world. So yeah, we'll continue that. Actually, well, before I get into the next question, a bit of housekeeping. I don't have Dan to do any housekeeping music this week, so we'll do this. That's pretty scary. I just strummed like about 10 guitars. Anyway, housekeeping. Housekeeping. This month's patron giveaway. Congratulations to the 2 winners of September's giveaway. 2 pedals were up for grabs, a Ryra 808 and the J Rocket Touch Overdrive. Vim from Antwerp, Belgium, and Graham from Perth in Australia. An international affair indeed. And news of October's giveaway is coming soon. If anyone is liking the That Pedal Show work shirt, lots of you bought these. They've been really, really popular. We're restocking a couple of colours in the next week or so. So keep your eye on the store if you want a work shirt. Great layering option. That's a hit if ever I've heard one, says Daniel Mincher. I know. Rick Rubin will be on the phone in a minute, won't he? I like your flow, man. Where were we then? I've got a Hageman half watt for travel, says Kelv Muller. He actually says Heaterman, but I think maybe you mean Hageman half watt. Would be a typing, predictive text thing. What are your thoughts on speakers? Should I use little powered monitors or passive guitar speaker? So the Hageman half watt is a really brilliant, Jim Hageman, hi Jim if you're watching, thing about yay big, not much bigger than a guitar pedal with a little transformer and a couple of tubes on it. I'm assuming it's a single-ended, like 1 watt. It's called half watt, but I think it's capable of slightly more than that. And it's got a speaker out on it, so you could do either. In purist terms, you want it into a guitar speaker, really, because it has no speaker emulation, I don't think. Please check that. But if it doesn't have any speaker emulation on it, obviously it won't have anything digital in it, but it might have an analog filter of some kind that sort of apes a speaker sound. If it doesn't have that, then you want it into a guitar speaker first. If you're going to use powered monitor speakers, they are, for all intents and purposes, full range flat response, even though they never are, as we've discovered a few times on That Pedal Show. But you'd probably want some sort of speaker emulation in between the Hageman half watt and your powered monitors. And that might mean you run it into an IR in a plug-in, which means you'd have to have a laptop as well, or some sort of computing device. Or you could use an analog, or not even analog, you could use a standalone speaker simulation device, something like the Blue Box, and there are many others. Somebody tell me if it does have speaker simulation built in. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so if you want it to sound like a guitar amp, use a guitar speaker. If you want to use powered monitors, you're going to need something that is either an IR or an analog filter to give you the sound of a speaker, which is not the same as an amp plugged directly into powered monitors. Does it need a speaker load? That's the next question. It may well need a speaker load. Sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. If it needs a speaker load, then you do need to use a guitar speaker. Yeah. Daniel Mincher says, okay, don't hate me. What's your views on Kempers? I think it's for the chat in general. Go for it. Go for it. It's a no from us. Hope that helps, Kelv. Most importantly of all, check if it needs a speaker load. I can't remember if it does or not. If it does, you need to use a speaker, obviously. Barry Thomas. Hello, Barry. Barry says, my question, is when you get the submarine hex pickup, there is one floating around here somewhere, a thing that's shaped sort of like a submarine, chrome thing. Do you arrange the wet dry rigs as a wall of 12 4x12s, or do you do it with 12 combos in a circle? And which amps are best for which strings? Awesome, mate. Love it. Love the ambition. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the submarine pickup comes in a couple of forms, and I don't know if it's the latest one or the original one, but one of the submarine pickups has hexaphonic output, which means a different output for each string. Is that right? Or does it split it? Anyway, if it does, and there have been various hexaphonic pickups over the years, didn't Gibson try to develop one? Magic? Was that? Or was that something else? Anyway, there have been numerous hexaphonic pickups over the years. You can split the signal and send it out to multiple things. I am loving the 12 amps in a circle. Like, it's not our idea, but Tonehenge, right? We've been talking to Paul Goff at Zilla about that quite a bit. He wants to build an actual Tonehenge out of guitar cabs. And if you've been to a recent guitar show where he's been exhibiting, you may have seen some images on that vein. Actually, I quite like that idea. Didn't Neil Young do something similar? Let's do that. Let's get amps in a circle around us firing in. Yeah. Thanks, Barry. Ziad, or Zyad ZD, says, I decided to move from the Deluxe Reverb Tone Master to the real thing, but also looked at Deluxe inspired amps. Now I'm considering a Victory V40. What are your thoughts? If you mean the standard Victory V40 lunchbox head, there's a couple of reasons I wouldn't choose that if you actually want the sound of a Deluxe Reverb. And by Deluxe Reverb, I guess we mean the 65 reissue Deluxe Reverb, like the one we've got here. Classic mid-60s black panel Fender amp, 22 watts, 6v6s. Awesome. So the reason I wouldn't choose the standard V40 over a Deluxe Reverb, if you want a Deluxe Reverb, one, really, really lovely spring reverb in the Deluxe Reverb. Mega spring reverb and tremolo. In the V40, it is a digital reverb, which sounds good. It's a perfectly decent sounding reverb, but it is not really anything like the full-on spring reverb sound from a long tank that you get in a Deluxe Reverb. Secondly, the voicing of the amp is quite different. So I would say the V40 in standard lunchbox form has a bit more heft about it, a bit more mid-range push, and if you push it, it will overdrive at much lower volumes than the Deluxe Reverb will overdrive really great if you turn it right up, but not very many people can do that, and it's one flavour of overdrive. One really great thing about the V40 in lunchbox form is that it will get closer, much closer to a Brit like Marshall-y type crunch than the Deluxe Reverb ever will. So if you like the sound of that, that's a good reason to go for the V40. Now, if you're talking about V40 Deluxe, different kettle of fish. That does have a proper spring reverb, and it has tube driven and recovered tremolo, I think. That's a different animal. Again, not massively like a Deluxe Reverb. Would I have that or a Deluxe Reverb? I would have that because I think it's more versatile. I prefer the overdrive at lower volumes, and it is a bit more of a evolved machine, shall we say. Deluxe Reverb's great. V40 Deluxe is a really, really lovely amp if you just want to go a bit further. And in that same vein, depending on where you are in the world, you're in Europe, so they're going to be really expensive, but the Tone King Imperial Mark II is the obvious choice for a Deluxe Reverb alike. A bit more versatile, got the built-in attenuator, really lovely reverb and tremolo. I would say a superior amp to the Deluxe Reverb, but that is reflected in price, especially in Europe where they're going to be crazy expensive compared to in America where you're not dealing with all the export and import cobblers. So there you go. Also check out the Mesa Fillmore 25, I think it's called, or the Mesa Fillmore. I don't know if they still make it, but that was very much Deluxe Reverb inspired as well. And there's lots and lots of other things out there that will get you close. Yeah, I don't know about the lower end of the market. I'm sure that Bugera probably does something that's Deluxe inspired. Be highly unusual if they didn't, and that will be extremely cost effective. And our experience with Bugera brand has been really good, so check that out as well. Good. I'm just checking that everything is all good in the show. Oh, lots and lots of comments coming in. Forrest Lee says, Mick, thanks for holding down the fort. Hey, what's up with that dope TPS shirt you're sporting? Is it new? No, we've had them for quite a long time. This one's been washed a lot, so it's nicely worn in. They're called work shirts. They're in the store. They sell pretty quick. We can't get them in huge quantities, but they sell pretty quick, and they come in this color, they come in black, and they come in a navy blue, depending on what we can get when. So go to that Pedal Show store and see if they're in. We are restocking in about a week, I believe. Yeah, TPS work shirt. Good. Dr. Z Z-Lux, Mr. Buttons is saying. So Dr. Z has a Deluxe alike. And if you've got like loads of money, don't listen to one if you don't have loads of money, but the 2 Rock Vintage Deluxe is like is my considered opinion of it. Good luck. Michael Schneider. Hello, Michael. Michael Schneider from the USA. He's saying at $1,800, I'm considering a used Eric Johnson, which some people call Fender's best production Stratocaster, versus a used Nash S63. Isn't discussed as often, but has a lot of pickups as standard. What are your thoughts, and are there any alternatives? Is a Nash S63 not a rosewood board? Let's have a look. Yeah, I think all the Nash S63s have a rosewood board. The Eric Johnson, oh, there is a rosewood board. Eric Johnson Strat. The Eric Johnson Strat that everyone knows is like the 2-tone sunburst maple neck one. That's the most common one. They do come in other colours. I believe there's a red. Is there a red, Dakota Red or Fiesta maybe? Might be Candy Apple. Anyway, some kind of red. And after that, they did bring out a rosewood model which has got a bound fingerboard. Bound fingerboard, just weird on a Strat. But anyway, you might like it. So if you are talking about the maple neck and therefore fingerboard, one piece of wood, 2-tone sunburst one, that will be different. That will be a different thing from the rosewood board Nash guitar. We could get into all kinds of generalisms about how different rosewood and maple neck Fenders sound. They do, and they do. Not necessarily universally, but once you've played a lot, you start to recognise how they sound different. The bigger difference is feel, actually, because I don't know what the front of the... I had an Eric Johnson Strat, one of the early ones, and I had to remove a lot of the finish because I just didn't like it on the fingerboard. It's too sticky for me, nitrocellulose on a fingerboard. But unless you can play the guitar for 30 years and it kind of goes to that beautiful thing that they go to. Anyway, I'm yakking. I've played quite a few of Bill's guitars as well. I knew Bill a little bit, Bill Nash, back in the day. He's really, really interesting guy. Really, really knows his stuff and makes lovely guitars. And per your comment, Fender's best production Stratocaster is a very difficult thing to assert because, you know, one thing we know about modern Fender, modern PRS, is the attention to detail and consistency between model after the other is really excellent, actually. And so in the old days when we used to talk about build quality issues, you know, nitro that hasn't gone off properly, necks that don't fit properly, all that sort of stuff, those days are largely over because everything's CNC'd. It's, you know, the production is really, really, really high quality. However, that doesn't change the fact that two guitars just produced on the same day, on the same line, to exactly the same build quality will sound and feel the same. I can't explain it. They just do. And some guitars you pick up and it's not a universal thing either. It's not like this is a great guitar, that is not a great guitar. It's more, you might love this one, I might love that one, and I don't know how to explain it. So I would say if you can, play them. The EJ is always going to be easier to sell than the Nash. It's just the way it is with brands. And if you can't play them and you're buying them unseen, buy the one you like the look of, because that's going to make you want to pick it up. Yeah, good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Simon VRDJ. Simon, how are you, buddy? Good to hear from you. He says, hi, Mick. Chris Buck is doing an intimate Q&A. I'm not sure I'm totally in for that. In Pontypridd on the 12th of November. Fancy catching up with him. I can squeeze you and Dan in. Hope it's a yes. I'll have to check my diary, which is, I know, a dodgy thing to say, but I do have to. We are like, days are just evaporating at the moment. But it would be great. If we can come, we'll come, or I will come. I haven't seen Chris in blimmin' ages, actually. And it is fantastic to see the success that Cardinal Black are having, just touring the US and really, really having it, really doing it. Good on you guys. It's hard, right? It's hard being in a rock and roll band these days, and they're doing it. They're out there doing it. So thank you, Simon, for the invite. I will check my diary. Depends what day of the week that is. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Non-aligned says, if a master guitar builder offered to build you any guitar with any features and spec you wanted, what would you request? And what about a master amp builder? Maybe just a clone of Robin Stumble. Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? I am actually having a guitar built at the moment, which I really do need to make some decisions on and get over the finish line. As you know, Dan and I both fans of very traditional guitars, and I think we're both, at this point, we're in the arc of being entirely enamoured with vintage guitars. And I have to say, new guitars don't hold massive appeal, should I say. I'm just going to check the podcast is still recording, because I think the cursor isn't moving. It is. I just couldn't see it. Sorry about that. That said, I would have an archtop, like a carved archtop by somebody who really knew what they were doing. Because those guitars are art, and they are just... I had the great pleasure... I knew Bill Collings a bit. I wouldn't say Bill and I were friends. I didn't know him that well, but I did hang out with him a bit, and I spent some time with him in the years before he died. And, we did a couple guitar shows together, and I visited them in Austin, so I spent a little bit of time with Bill, and I got to see a lot of the stuff that he had made, whether it was guitars, cars that he'd restored. He was just an endless... He was fascinated by anything, like roofs on houses, anything that was engineered well and like to the nth degree, he was into it. And I also had the great pleasure of playing some of his archtops. Now, he didn't build every single one, but he did. He had a much closer hand in those than he did some other parts of the guitars as time went on, right, as it grew. But yeah, to own one of those and to have the connection with the builder, I think, is probably where the value in that relationship is, rather than purely in the guitar itself. So yeah, I'd have one of Bill's archtops, I think. Amp-wise, yeah, Robin Stumble. Easy. It's really weird for me and Dan, right? Because we know lots of people we're very grateful to know lots of people, and we're very lucky to know lots of people, and we're friends with a lot of those people. And it does change your view of it. You know, like using one of Simon Jarrett's overdrive pedals, for example, means more because we know Simon. I'm not saying we're biased towards Simon's stuff. I'm saying that knowing him, knowing the work that goes in, and loving the sound, it sort of creates a circle. And I appreciate that not everyone can get that. Not everyone can get close to the people that builds their stuff. But maybe that's how brand works. Like, you associate with a brand because it has a certain collection of values. And that's why you go for certain brands, maybe. But yeah, one of Bill's Archtops. Not that I could play it, but and an Amp by Dumble, maybe. But you know what? Eli at Two Rock had a significant hand in this, and because I know Eli, and because I know him to be an extraordinary human being, that probably means more to me than a relationship with someone I don't know. So, yeah, we are lucky. We're very, very lucky. I appreciate that probably all sounds a bit spoilt, but there we are. There we are. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the question. Be interested to see what you guys are saying in the chat about all of that. Todd Roy says, being a huge Fender guy, I do, as time goes on, find myself respecting original guitar builders like John Suhr, Tom Anderson, James Tyler and Paul Reed Smith. Yeah. You know, I don't know what Tyler's doing these days, but certainly John Suhr, Tom Anderson and Paul Smith, you know, still firing on all cylinders, still at different types of business, still utterly passionate about what they do, and that is just ultimate respect. And James Tyler might be as well, by the way. I don't know. My apologies for my ignorance there. And WizDog says, Mick, what about Amplified Nation amps? I might have missed a show where you guys played one. Would you compare it to your Two Rock? I haven't actually. Maybe I played one. Yeah, I was super intrigued. I watched videos and followed the story of the company and everything. So it would be super interesting to try one. Absolutely. Matt Miller says, is Transit Van full nitro finished or poly base coat? Aren't they all poly base coat? In any case, it was when Fender switched in 2012 to doing much more period correct versions of the American vintage guitars, and it's super crazy thin. I remember on the first ones that came out, and that is a really early one, even though I bought it secondhand, those finishes were crazy thin. So it's certainly much thinner and harder than the finish on Blue, which was a previous version of the same guitar. So does it have a poly bass coat? I don't know. Interestingly enough, the aforementioned Bill Nash is very, very hot on all of that. I remember having dinner with him one night and him just getting increasingly incandescent about how rubbish Fender's finishes were on modern guitars. Anyway, we'll move on. Man, he's a character. He is a character. Michael Giliberto. Hey, Michael. Good to hear from you, buddy. He says, hi, Mick. No questions today. This super chat is for that Bigsby. It looks fantastic. Cheers from southeastern Connecticut, where we're having a classic nor'easter storm today. Nor'easter. Sorry, I'll put my words mixed up. A nor'easter, a storm from the northeast, presumably. There you go then. We'll just show it again. The Bigsby is on the guitar. There is a full video coming up, and it is magic. He said. It's still settling down. Sorry, I'm in a slightly weird position. Massive thank you to Gerhard Schwartz at Schwartz Custom Guitars and St. Helens Hardware, who found this for me, found this Bigsby. And it went on with minimum swearing. And just two little new holes there, look. Video to come. Has it changed the sound of the guitar? Yes, it has. Is it better? It's different. Is it worse? No. Thank you, Michael. Tom Kuluri. Hey, Tom, how are you? Coming in from the US. He says, shout out to Mario Martin guitars. I bought an S-style guitar from them last week and the quality is second to none. Best option after vintage, in my humble opinion. Mario Martin guitars. Never heard of them. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, very nice. There's a second-hand one at... there was a second-hand one at Rich Tone Music. Oh yeah, that looks really nice. Very nice. Well, hope you enjoy your new guitar. Again, back to Bill Nash. It's interesting what the smaller builders can do that the bigger ones can't. Because of, you know, production numbers and consistency and all of that. And there might be features about a small volume builder, depending on who that is, that just appeals to you more than buying a factory production guitar. I don't necessarily think they're universally better, but there might be things that they do in the production process that just appeal to you a bit more, which, as I said earlier, you just can't do on a crazy production level. Hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it, Tom. Morley Robertson. Hello, Morley. He says, hello, TPS family. Hello, TPS family. My brother took me to see Nazareth last week. Get in. Jimmy Morrison had 2 full 100-watt Marshall stacks on stage. The sound was immense. No question this week. Please take one from the chat. Okay, Morley. Yeah, it's arresting, isn't it? I think the people that came to the Experience Day on Friday will attest to how arresting volume is. And that's just in here with a, you know, 200-watt Marshalls. Goodness me. Goodness me. No Vibramate, says Tiz. No. I don't want any of that. I want it original. I just want it 65 spec. I know they're very good, the Vibramates, and I know they mean you don't have to drill holes and all that, and I know they're efficient, and lots of people swear by them. I swear at them. I just want it as it was, right? Everything as it was. And for reasons I don't really understand, I care about that. Okay, Athers13, and we'll take one from the chat, and this is Athers13. Hello, Athers. Mick, does your custom shop Strat get much playtime these days? Yes, it does. I play it on the show, the gold one, I think you mean, which is, I think, the only custom shop Strat I own. Bought this from Anderton's a few years back. I went through a period where I was using it much more on the show than the 61 for a couple of reasons. Oh yeah, dead strings. For a couple of reasons. One, it's just a bit easier to handle than the 61 sometimes. Plays a little better, a little easier, I think. And there was a time when it had RWRP pickups, so if I go into 2 and 4, it was much less noisy. But as it turns out, it's got Klopman 60 set, which are the same polarity and same direction. I like the sound of them. That's one reason. 2, if I'm doing a gig where I don't want to take the old Strat, like if it's like a festival or somewhere where there's like I haven't got eyes on all the time, I'll take this, and it's a great live guitar, so I play it for that a lot as well. Yeah, it's that I wouldn't say it's like absolutely interchangeable with the 61, but it is flipping close. It's a great guitar, and I love the neck profile. So yeah. Although I think Dan and I we're both getting to a point where 9 times out of 10, maybe 19 times out of 20, he's going to pick up Red or the SG. He's totally in love with the SG at the moment, and he's really bonding with it. And it's kind of the same with me with the old Strat, the Les Paul, and now the 345. And then you start to have all these thoughts like, we could just do without all this other stuff and it could go and have a happy life somewhere else. I think that's just something you go through, isn't it? I wouldn't want to lose any of the guitars because then I wouldn't want to lose any guitar. I wouldn't want to necessarily sell any of the other guitars because there are times and places, particularly on the show, where we're like, oh, what we need here is a junior, or what we need here is, something appropriate for the sound we're after. So, yeah, but nevertheless, I do feel a bit guilty when so many of the guitars go unplayed for a long time. Yeah. 21st century problems, eh? Venice King 1. Hello. What would be the best way to use a Kingsley Juggler version 3 with a 2-Rock Studio signature? I don't usually use effects loops. Should I? No, I use mine straight in the front. In fact, when I replaced the Bigsby on the 345, I've done some very specific before and after sounds. I've actually mic'd the guitar up as well, so you can hear it acoustically, but I used a Kingsley Juggler version 3 straight into the front of the 2-Rock, of this 2-Rock. God, it's ridiculous, isn't it? What a ridiculous thing to say, of this 2-Rock. Right, on the front of the Juggler, if you've got a Juggler version 3 like this, you'll see a switch here that says output on it. Right, what that does is, if you want to go into the effects loop return of another amp, be it a 2-Rock or a Hot Rod Deluxe or whatever it is you're going to do, and bypass the preamp section of the amp completely and just hit the effects loop return, I think it's down. I wouldn't swear to that. It might be all the way up, but that optimizes the output level and impedances to hit a effects loop return. In the other two positions, it's optimized for use as an overdrive pedal, basically, so it's good to go in the front of your amp. That's how I use it most of the time, and it sounds flipping great straight into the front. It's a very loud pedal, so I guess you might just want to make sure that you're not hitting, like if you've got any analog delays or anything like that, you might want to make sure you're not hitting them too crazy and making them overdrive. Certain analog modulation pedals, like Harmonious Monk version 1, you can overdrive that if you really slam it. Boss choruses, certainly DM2, the Dimension, if it's called a DM2, you can overdrive those things if you hit them too hard. So just be wary of that. Other than that, if you're using modern digital effects, Boss, Strymon, Meris, whatever, you shouldn't have a problem with that. So, because they should have the headroom to sit in an effects loop anyway if you want them to, so you should be fine. Good luck. I imagine that would be an absolutely killer guitar sound. Lefty O Bass. Hello, Lefty O Bass. Lefty O Bass says, I loved Friday's episode. Epic tones, some gorgeous playing from both of you, and Dan's face when he was getting transported by the big puffed. Nucleo hugeness. Will there be any board swaps as a result for you? Yeah, that's we're both crazy impressed with the Nucleo for sure. Dan, definitely love-hate with digital reverb on his pedal board, and at the moment I don't think he has anything on the... This is Dan's current pedal board. That's the top row. Then underneath, rat's nest, other stuff. Hopefully there's nothing you shouldn't see under there. No digital reverb. Sometimes he'll have a Meris thing on there, sometimes not. Doesn't use the H9 for any reverbs, he uses that purely in kill dry mode for pitch shifting. Because some of the 70s songs they do needs the pitch shifter and it sounds unbelievable. Nevertheless, when he was playing with the Nucleo, he got, as you heard, he got completely lost in it. and he was considering that. Would I swap it out for the CXM? I'd have to spend more time with it. So all that stuff that it does that's amazing, like the hold, the particle, whatever you call that, I don't need any of that. It sounds amazing, but I'd never use any of that in the music that I play. So CXM. Now, if it would do the 4 sounds I use the CXM for, then I would seriously consider it because it's so much smaller. But I have a very tight bond with the CXM. I love it dearly. And I suppose if somebody poured a pint in it and it died and I couldn't afford a new one, then maybe Nucleo would be the way to go. The Tamura Overdrive was really fantastic. Reminded me in a big way how much I love that TS thing, and that one has all the stuff that annoys me about standard tube screamers. But I've sort of gravitated away from that sound for a minute, more into the tube overdrives at the minute, and loving the combination of the Kingsley stuff that I've got going on, and the Crazy Tube Circuits Venus. Absolutely loving that. So yeah, the Big Puffed, I wouldn't want to be too far away with it. I wouldn't want it too far away in here, because if you want a muff with mids in just the right place, it is spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. So yeah, pedalboard changes, don't know. I think what happens is that particular combination of pedals and amps on the day, just, I don't know, there was just some harmony going on. And as a result, we were both very, very inspired. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you take one of those things out and put it in your rig, it's going to do the same thing. But yeah, it's nice to have that inspiration. I think what it was from the moment he got that huge ambient reverb up, and then it was in the intro actually, and as a bit of a joke, I went to push the Big Puffed on, thinking this will just completely ruin what he's trying to play and send him into some crazy place, and it was perfect. It was perfect. So happy days. I'll just dive in the main chat and see what's going on. Make sure that we're not missing anything. Live to Play Guitar says, Mick, who were your favourite players when you were growing up? Well, he says favourite player. Well, favourite player would be Stevie Ray Vaughan. Favourite players would be Stevie Ray Vaughan, Mark Knopfler, John Frusciante. Although I was 16 by the time I heard John Frusciante. Clapton, Cream Clapton, not after that. Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac era Peter Green, and those are the players that we had, because maybe like a lot of you watching, I was 14 in 1988, not long after the CD came out. When the CD came out, 85, 86. So if you wanted to listen to music, you had to get a record or a CD and put it on your parents' record player, right? Because we didn't have record players in our room, certainly didn't have CD players or cassette machines or anything like that. So access to music actually wasn't that easy. Plus, as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, you didn't have money to buy endless records. So you just, I distinctly remember going around to a mate's house and they had their attic converted into like a sort of play den for the kids, 3 boys. And up there they had a record player, and we used to go up and listen to Black Sabbath and AC/DC and have the occasional cigarette. And oh my God, it just felt like, listening to that music felt like contraband. I know, I appreciate it's a bit of a tangent, but when you relate it to who your favourite guitar players are, they were probably the people you had access to, because you just didn't have access to anyone. And I wonder how it is for kids now, where literally the whole of music history is right there in front of them on Apple Music or Spotify or YouTube, And how do you concentrate long enough to get a favourite of anything? I'm almost grateful that all I had was Highway to Hell. There were cassettes. I had a few cassettes, and then by the time you were old enough where your mates started getting cars and you could be in a car, then that was much easier because you could have music on in the car. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, it was Stevie Ray Vaughan was my favourite guitar player as a kid. Closely followed by Angus Young. Chris Quinn, Mick, does the 345 fit the case properly? I carry it in a gig bag. I don't use a case. One of the things I hate in life are guitar cases because they don't fit in any of the cars I own. So I use these Reunion Blues gig bags. And obviously, let it be said, you wouldn't put it in the back of a van in a gig bag, right? But been a while since I'm chucking guitars in the back of a van. So when it goes in the Reunion Blues gig bag, what happens is it goes in. You can't, I don't know if you can see, but the Bigsby bends down and it sits really beautifully in between the padding. I'm just going to be very careful about how no, I'm not going to lift it up. I'm just not going to do it. The Bigsby arm sits really beautifully in between the bottom padded bit and the bottom of the case. There's plenty of room for it to be there. And what's really cool about Bigsby's is when they're back like that, they're quite flat. When they're forward like that, they stick up a bit more. There is a new spring coming for it actually, but that's another story. So yes, it does. Yeah, man, I really hate guitar cases. Do you know who else hated guitar cases? Bill Collins. And as a result, he designed his own. Like you would. Back to the super chats. Will Keeler. Keeler. Man, these glasses. So I finally got like full on, do you call them progressives in the US? Here we call them varifocals. So at the top it's far, in the middle it's mid, and at the bottom it's reading. But the distortion on the lenses, man, and I paid like, I was like, they totally sold me on the expensive upgrades. The distortion, like here, right? My laptop, top of my laptop is like that. It's like the arc of a bridge. So, anyway, it's not going very well. And as a result, I can't see your name, Will. Kiefer. Oh, maybe that's because there's a bit of crap on my screen. See, this is why you tune in, isn't it? Kiefer? Kiefer. Will Kiefer. Hello, Will. Hi, Mick. I'm a long-time Strat player and just got a 1971 335 with T-tops. Having a hard time dialing in sounds. Any tips? Do you adjust your amp when switching? Love the core 335 sound, but it feels less versatile than my Strat. Yeah, I can relate to this, Will. And we've had this question in different forms a number of times. We talk about it on Experience Day. So when Dan and I plug our rigs in, he usually starts with the Telly and then moves to the SG. I usually start with the Strat and move to a 335 or a Les Paul. And the first question inevitably that comes up is, oh, don't you change anything for the two guitars? It's like, no, we don't. You might lean on one of your overdrives a little more for one guitar and maybe, you know, so you might have one overdrive that works really great with the 335 and one that works really great with the Strat, and that's fine, you know, to be expected. But generally, no big EQ changes, no level changes. And that's because Dan and I like vintage voice guitars, and actually if you plug in a vintage voice Telly, Strat, Les Paul and 335, they're not a million miles away from each other output wise. Different EQ curve maybe, but you're in the same ballpark. So I distinctly remember buying my first Les Paul. I would have been about 16 at the time, and I bought a late 80s Les Paul Standard Tobacco Sunburst. I took it to the gig, and the gig was in Yeovil. I'm trying to remember the name of the pub. It was part way down the hill by the Quidam Centre. I forget what it was called. King's Arms, maybe? I had a Mark III Boogie, if I remember correctly, which is not bad for a 16-year-old, right? And I'm used to my yellow Strat, banging away, plug the Les Paul in, because I didn't really have time to play it much before we go to the gig. So I take it to the gig. I'm like, oh my God, like all the frequencies, I wouldn't have been able to put it in these terms at that time, but all the frequencies I was used to hearing from my Strat at various volumes were now in different places and 8 times as loud. And that was like, oh yeah, I don't like Les Pauls at all. Because, and as I crawl very ungracefully to the point, you can't be expecting this guitar to do the same thing as that guitar. What I would suggest you do, if you have the time and inclination, is play something that's right for that guitar. I never understood fuzz until I had to play Jimmy properly, or play songs that had fuzz in it properly. So trying to shoehorn a fuzz face into like a regular blues set was never happening. But then all of a sudden Purple Haze gets on the set list and you're like, ah, right, now I understand. And then you sort of work back, and I think it's the same for guitars. So rather than expecting it and be versatile like your Strat, what I would encourage you to do is pick a point in the set that your Strat is maybe least good at, or that you could use the sound of a humbucker in, you know, depending on what your Strat is currently, you don't say. But there's plenty of rock songs out there that sort of require a bridge humbucker, really, and use it for that. And try and make it fit, or at least, I don't know. The thing that sold me on the 335 when I got one first many years ago, we did Cream songs. We did Sunshine of Your Love. We did White Room. I think we did Politician. And while that can sound really great on a Strat, on the 335, because that was my first entry into it, I didn't have an SG, was just epic. And I was like, okay, now I understand what this guitar is for. Similarly, if you want to play any BB or, you know, experiment with the in-between position. So that's what I would suggest. Find a point in the set or in the music that you play that makes sense for that kind of sound. But, you know, if you're trying to play Sultans of Swing, and I'm not suggesting you are for a second, but if you're trying to play Sultans of Swing on your 335, then yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Good luck though. That's a really cool guitar, 71 with T-tops. I think you just got to use it for what it wants to do rather than for what maybe you want it to do. Good luck. Mellowfellow 7 says, hi Mick, is your 2-rock 1x15 cab the same as the one paired with a vintage deluxe, or are they different? No, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same. It's the cab they designed to go with the vintage deluxe. And I knew I'd like it, but I like it much more than I thought I would. It's really, really a groovy thing. When you listen, if for those of you who do watch the 345 Bigsby swap, Bigsby fit, should I say, I use the classic reverb on the 115 cab just with one overdrive pedal because I want to keep it as simple as possible. And I have yet to listen back to the audio, and I can't wait, because my perception in the room was one thing, and I'm very interested to hear what ended up getting recorded. It was a really long day because I changed the strings on the guitar, played the guitar for half an hour. So it's half an hour string wear on the guitar. Come in here, play some set piece stuff, very specific things, and just some other things that you'll hear. Go in the other room, take the strings off, do the Bigsby fit, however long that ended up taking, which you'll find out in the video. Put a new set of strings on, play those in for half an hour, come back in here, try and remember all the things that I'd played and blah, blah, blah. And it took like 13 hours, I think, all in, something like that. And by the end of it, you're quite jaded. And I was actually a bit crestfallen because I think I was just tired and I wasn't sure what I was hearing anymore. So I'm looking forward to hearing the thing back. What was the question? 1x15. Yes, it's the same as the vintage deluxe one. And it sounds great under that Filmer sound amp that we've got, and it really does sound good under the classic reverb. I want to say it's rated at 100 watts. I think it is, but, you know, just do check. Oh. Matt Miller. Math Miller? Oh man, this isn't going to work, is it? I think what it is, like with the consistently varying distances, I don't know, I just don't know what I'm looking at. Matt Miller says, where would one find aged breath compensated saddles for a telly? Would be going on a Ventura Road War. Road Worn. Vintera Road Worn, I want to say that probably is. And you want aged compensated saddles for a telly. Where are you? If you're in England, check out Charles Guitars. Charles Guitars, they have a really good range of lovely parts. And if you're in the US, check out Callahan perhaps. Lots of good hardware companies in the US. But if you're in the UK, Callahan, Charles Guitars is a really good shout. Failing that, just Google search and you'll find some. Sean Brooks, why do you think PRS amps can't seem to make headway into the market like their guitars? Fascinating question. That's a really, really fascinating question. I've had strategy meetings with people before who have brands in one particular product group, be they whatever they might be, guitars, basses, amps, guitars, looking to try and find another market. I.e., if they're an amp maker, they want to make guitars, or if they're a guitar maker, they want to make amps. And it's been pointed out to me, no doubt you guys will come up with some alternatives, but it's been pointed out to me that the only company that's really done it successfully is Fender. Obviously, there are companies that make guitars and amps, but on a grand scale, who can we think of apart from Fender? So it is tough. You know, Vox make guitars. Who else? PV. I guess PV. We could say PV. Absolute mega successful in guitars and amps, but probably much more successful in amps. PRS? Well, amps are interesting, right? Amps are super interesting. It would be, I'd love to see some numbers, because my gut feel is that probably boutique amps are selling okay, and higher end tube amps are probably selling okay, but I think the entry and mid-level tube amps market is struggling big time because so many people are going digital. I think that is a pendulum that has swung as far away from tube amps as it's likely to swing, and I think it might be coming back a bit. But, you know, if you're just getting into guitar, the journey for most kids getting into the guitar is not guitar and tube amp, right? It's guitar and some sort of digital modeling thing, and then it's probably quite quickly into software after that if you're young. So I think that's one thing facing any amp brand, but particularly an amp brand trying to make headway. And then of those that do make it to guitar amps, they're obviously invested in the idea of a guitar amp because it doesn't make any practical sense. So maybe that brand job has already been done. How hard does any other amp brand have to work for you not to buy a Marshall? I mean, maybe Marshall isn't as all-pervasive as it used to be, but there was a point, if you looked at a concert stage, it was Marshalls and maybe Fenders. And all of our guitar heroes, or at least a great, great, great many of them, played Marshalls or Fenders. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a good chat to go on. Sean Brooks says, I will say, none of the PRS amps look cool. I don't know. I mean, that MT15 that came out, the Tremonti, was a flipping brilliant amp. They've made some great amps. Some of the ones that Grissom had a hand in. And I remember when they first launched the amps, meeting Doug Sewell, who was a big part of the PRS amp development. And man, some of those amps sounded utterly killer. I will share one anecdote before we move on. I remember being in the press launch in Maryland for the amps when they first came out. And we were all sat there, all the Guitar Magazine people, and Grissom was there, and there was a few other cognoscenti there. You know, it was quite a rare air for a minute. And Paul and Doug very passionately deliver the press information for the new amps. And I don't know if you can remember, and I don't know if they still do it, but the amps were covered in this beautiful black and brown paisley fabric. And I don't know if it was the first question or the second question, but a dealer sticks his hands up and says, will they be available in black? And you just watch all the life just drain out of Paul for a nanosecond as he's like, what have I got to do here? What have I got to do? Happy days. We drank that well that weekend. Yeah. Yeah. Some nice stuff. Simon VRDJ saying PRS launched a new DGT 15-watt amp last week. I didn't know that. Raft of new guitars. Yeah, it'd be good to check out that. Anyway. Patrick DeMars. Sorry, I should probably get back to the super chats, but Patrick DeMars says, have I missed an episode on Blake Mills? His tone, his guitar's wonderful player. I want to answer this because Dan and I went to see Blake Mills and Pino Palladino last week in Cardiff. I shit you not, it was like nothing I have ever heard or seen. So Dan didn't know that Blake and Pino had made some records together, and he hadn't heard them. So he had no idea what to expect. I think Dan was expecting to see Blake doing sort of roughly solo Blake Mills type material like we would hear on Hi Ho, or, you know, one of his records. We're both massive fans of that record. Hey Ho, Hi Ho. What we encountered was about as far away from that as it's possible to get. And it's almost like Blake has gone, yeah, that's not me anymore. I don't do that. And all I'll say is, if I watch Pat Martino, if I watch Steve Vai, if I watch Robin Ford, if I watch Uncle Larry, I know what they're doing. Doesn't mean I can do it, and I definitely can't do it. I don't have the facility or the harmonic knowledge to do it, but I know exactly what they're doing. They're picking notes, they're fretting them, and in a particular combination of speed and technique, I understand exactly what's happening. I swear to you, for about 80% of that gig, I had absolutely no idea what Blake Mills was doing. The sounds that were being created were out of this world. Absolutely, like he was using some of the nastiest gear, right? If we can be that frank about it. And some sounds that in a different time and place you would say were super crazy cheesy. Honestly, with the combination of Pino on bass, I think there's a guy called Chris Dave and somebody else, and I'm really sorry I can't remember their names, sax player, or at least a woodwind player, some electronic woodwind and some actual acoustic sax, and a drummer percussionist. It was extraordinary. So he had a fretless guitar, and he also had a guitar with a piezo pickup, which was driving some synth sounds. And there were moments interplay with the sax and the guitar, and you didn't quite know who was doing what. And he was messing around with all this tuning stuff. And I don't mean alternate tunings, I mean actually tuning using pedals while he's playing to create this unbelievable tension and release that was just captivating. It was utterly captivating. I'm mesmerized by it. I phoned Dan the next day and I said, mate, what did you think of that? And he said, well, I woke up this morning wondering why bother. And I said, yeah, I feel exactly the same, actually. And I said, but come on, it's okay. 3 weeks before, we were in a stadium of 88,000 people watching a dude play G, C, F and E minor. So it's all good, right? It's all good. Long story short, why haven't we done Blake? I'm not... If he'd do it, I mean, I did put some feelers out, but didn't get any love back. I get the impression, and I don't know that this to be true, but he is so cerebral. I don't know if he'd do it. I don't know if he'd do it. It was astonishing. Blake Mills, Pino Palladino, please listen to the records. It's I've never heard or seen anything like it. It was incredible. Oh God, that was a tangent. Yeah, lots of people are coming in saying, you know, there are other people doing similar stuff. Frank Gambale, Andy McKee. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, it's good to hear. It's good to hear somebody is pushing, and by golly, are they pushing? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, super chat. Sorry, I got well off track here. Zarid says, happy Monday TPS. No questions today. Please take one from the chat. Zarid, I hope you'll take the last couple that I've taken as that. So thank you very much for your super chat. Raf Freitas. Raf, always good to hear from you, buddy. He says, hi, M. I'm replacing the speaker on a closed cab. Celestion G12P80 to a G12H75. Any tips on recording the comparison? SM57, Rode NTK, Apollo Twin, Luna. Yeah, I don't know if you've got anything loopy. If you've got a loop pedal. Or if you've got a delay that's capable of doing a loop. I'll tell you what I would do, and I do this, is play a phrase into the loop. And modern loop pedals, you can, you know, go for quite some time. So it might be that you play like a couple clean chords, and then you might want to turn on an overdrive pedal. If you put the loop last, it'll just record whatever hits it, right? The looper. And play some crunchy stuff, and then maybe play some single note stuff. So you've got, what, a minute and a half of stuff. You can then just record that, mark your microphone position, record that, and then swap the speaker and just do it again, taking careful note of where you've placed the mic. Now, that's good. That's all well and good. The downside is it might be that the sweet spot on that speaker is a slightly different mic position. And one thing I really would encourage you to do is to, maybe even with your loop playing, if you play something continual, I don't know why I'm doing that, play something continual, and as you do it, move the microphone across the whole 12-inch of the speaker, right across the middle of the cone. And what you'll hear is quite you will hear a radical difference in tone from that speaker. And it might be that, you know, this is your sweet spot, that's your sweet spot for that particular type of thing you're playing. So that's what I would do. I would employ a loop pedal, and then you can just, you know that what's hitting the speaker is exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Why don't we do that on TPS? The common answer is we like to play to the gear. So we like to play what the gear's telling us to play. It's true sometimes, but if I'm doing straight ABs, I'll use a loop pedal. Yeah. Good luck, Raf. For what it's worth, doesn't say what amp you're using, but for what it's worth, I would definitely prefer that G12H75 to that G12P80 speaker, personally speaking. Gen G Ripper says, hi Legends, hope you're both well. Yeah, we are. Thank you very much for asking. New amp day. I've just bought a Roland Jazz Chorus 40 and wanted to pair a natural sounding overdrive with my 60 style Strat. Any ideas? Thank you for your hard work. HW. Homework. JC40. We like that a lot, actually, from what I can remember. And as I remember, it does take overdrive pedals quite nicely. So I think it's whatever you're drawn towards. You say a natural sounding overdrive. Oh my God. Oh my God. We're into transparent territory, aren't we? What's a natural sounding overdrive? Greer Lightspeed? Where are you? You're in the UK. Okay, maybe not a Greer. But yeah, maybe a Greer Lightspeed is a good natural sounding overdrive. Like, I would say, unless it's the sound you really want, avoid a tube screamer, something that's got a very, very specific EQ curve. Boss Blues Driver. Loads of people use them. Really, really great thing. Cleans up real nice. And it's very interesting what different people's version of natural sounding is. So, like, natural sounding to me is not too bright and buzzy, little bit of compression, and just like more than you get from the guitar. And I think the Lightspeed fits that very nicely. Other people might say Hudson Broadcast sounds pretty natural to me. So go with your gut. And, you know, maybe buy a couple of things used on Reverb and just check them out. It's a learning process, because no matter how much you listen to YouTube demos and people like me and Dan bang on about it, it's not until you spend some time with it that it makes any sense. Greer Lightspeed would be top of my list. Brian Carpenter. Hello, Brian. Good to hear from you, buddy. He says, new guitar day, Music Man Cutlass. Nice. It's a stunning instrument. It's got a boost circuit built into the volume pot. Wondering if this type of circuit is the same as having a clean boost early on your board. It is and it isn't. It is because it's a boost, and if it's a straight, you know, full frequency boost, then the result into the amp is going to be largely similar. Where it differs significantly is what you've got after your output jack is a cable, obviously. And then if that hits your boost pedal, there's quite a complex relationship that happens when you use the volume control on the guitar. How that interacts with the cable in terms of capacitance, and what happens to the frequency response of what ends up, and the impedance, in fact, of what ends up hitting your first pedal. So I'm assuming it's got a battery in it. Don't know. If it's got a battery in it, it will fundamentally change the way your volume pot works. So, for example, it won't work with a fuzz, or it won't work brilliant with a fuzz face, because that requires a certain impedance relationship and to get that clean up. It might work great with some other pedals. So it's not exactly the same thing. And the place where it's most different is where you use the volume control into input impedance sensitive pedals. There you go. Which is not to say it's a bad thing. Mr. Clapton loved his 25 dB mid boost circuit in his Strat, didn't he? That was a big part of his sound for a long, long time, or is, I don't know. Townsend loves it. Pete Townsend loves it because he uses a Clapton Strat, or did. So Jerry Garcia had the onboard preamp, didn't he? The Alembic preamp. Am I getting that right? So yeah, I would experiment. I don't know if you can turn it on or off. Does it work if you disconnect the battery? If there is a battery. I don't know if you can do it passively. Anyway, experiment. Try. Yeah, AB. Good luck. And congratulations on the new guitar. It's always great getting a new guitar, isn't it? See if anyone's saying anything about that in the chat. Brad Denyar says the Gladio is a great overdrive that you might want to consider as your natural sounding overdrive. I would entirely agree. Sean Brooks, British people always calling things stunning. Yeah, what does that mean? Stunning. I'm stunned. In awe. Stopped in my tracks. David Rustad said yes, Jerry had the Alembic preamp. Chris Quinn says to Todd Roy, how does Larry get such great sounds with the Nobles? Mine sounds mushy. You do need to turn that filter control quite a way around to the right. I mean, my question, the question could just stop there. How does Larry get such great sounds on his damn iPhone? I'm assuming you're talking about Uncle Larry, Tom Bookerback. It's anathema to me how that guy, like, you know how fussy I am, right, about recording and all of that and how the lengths we go to. The only thing I watch on YouTube is Tom Bookerback iPhone. I think that's how he does it. Or, you know, compelling. Sounds amazing. Stunning. Digger68. Mick, how do I balance a humbucker with single coils with an HSS? I have no idea, but I'm about to find out. There you go. I'll dangle that one for you. I guess it's about pickup choice, isn't it? I did learn something today that I'm not going to mention, and you can just find out in due course. I apologise for being cryptic, but I don't want to give anything away because it's quite important, as you will find out. Yeah. Scott Brockway says, Uncle Larry just proves tone is in the hands and in your head. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately it is, but then comes the question, why does he use the gear he uses? Because if tone was just in the hands, he would use a Squier Strat and a Fender Bullet and sound just as good as he sounds with his 59 35 and whatever. So tone is from the human. I'll go with that. A great deal of tone does come from the human, but then what the human uses to bring the tone to the people is very important as well. You know, dear old Gilmore. Oh yeah, I could walk into any shop and still sound like, pick up any guitar and still sound like me. Yeah, you could, but you don't, do you? You don't do that. You use an absolutely insane rig and really nice vintage guitars. So it's all very well, David. Yeah. Anyway, right. Sorry, I shall carry on. Fat old guy at 5,000 meters. Good evening to you, sir. He says, you're offered for free either one, a lovely playing and sounding Nocaster that has customized inlays that look like a dice and a huge skull painted on the top, or a medium Relic 53 custom shop telly. Which would you choose? Latter for me. Depends if it was an original Nocaster or not. Yeah, I wouldn't. What is that Nocaster with the customised inlays and the skull? Was that somebody's signature guitar? Or a medium Relic 53 custom shop telly? Yeah, well, I'm always going to go for the more traditional looking thing. However, I would play them both. Could I play a guitar with a skull on it? Maybe. Maybe. Are you presented with this dilemma then? Is this something you're having to choose? Do hanker after a nice telly. My friend Alistair's got a lovely bound. I thought it was a double Esquire when I saw it first. Bound, super faded Relic pink. It is a fantastic guitar. Skulls. G Barge, hello mate. Hello mate. G says we had a magical matrimonial weekend with the marriage of our daughter to the greatest guy in the world. Congratulations. We're overflowing with happiness and wish all good things to the TPS community. I'll send some photos to Catherine. Cheers. Thank you, G, and congratulations. What a happy day. And I'm glad you had a lovely time. And on behalf of the entire TPS audience, thank you for your good wishes. Zach George. Hello, Zach. He says, hi from Louisiana. Hi to Louisiana. I recently started my own music festival for local original artists. Good for you, man. And bands in a town that has no music. What is some advice or tips to keep the bands happy and willing to return? I would rather hope that being offered the opportunity to play in a convivial environment would be enough, wouldn't it? Two-way street, isn't it? You're putting in your time and effort, and largely thanklessly, I might add, quite often when you do things like that, to do something good. And really, if the bands are going to come on board, you want to sift a bit, and you want to find the bands that are willing to help and be part of it and do it in good faith. And if the first question is, how much are you paying me, asshole? Then you'll say, well, goodbye, right? Because there is a bit of that out there in bandland. And if you're starting something new and to build, you want help and you want a spirit of help. Now, if you're going to stuff $50,000 in your pocket and not pay anyone, that's a different matter. But it won't be that, will it? It will be a slog getting it off the ground. It will be hopefully good fun and it will be rewarding. So I would say, work with the bands that are willing to work with you. But on top of that, decent PA. Really basic stuff like don't ask them to cart their gear 200 yards across a muddy field. I've done that. And just stuff like that, make it pro in terms of what they can expect. Give them somewhere to sit, give them somewhere to change their clothes. Those kinds of things. Just basic human stuff, right? And unlike your average wedding gig where somebody comes out the back and goes, oh no, it's the band. Don't step in the band. We've got a sandwich for you all. One sandwich. So yeah, that's what I do. Anyway, good on you, Zach. Hopefully you can find some people that are really willing to get on board and be part of what you're trying to build. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to bring people together and make music. If that is the heart of what you're trying to do, good for you, buddy. Good for you. Casey Cole, K Cole 4001 says, good PA and someone helpful running it. There you go. David Rustad says, SD Silver Sky, not a great mod platform. Parts are not interchangeable with other strats, really. David, I'm going to say one thing to you. Don't tell Dan. Matt Miller says, do you still have your old telly that's tuned down and weighs a lot? No, sold it to Chris, who came to an experience day. He bought it. WizDog says, agreed, it's why I haven't bought one, to David Rustad on the SE. Check out SE Mod, Silver Sky Mod Shop on Reverb. They do some good stuff. Oh, and actually, I can tell you, oh God, I hope Dan's not watching this. I can tell you that the routes in the SE Silver Skies do take strap pickups. In the main Silver Sky, they don't. In the SE, they do. The pickguard doesn't. That's as much as I'm going to say about that. Jason Hattrick. Jason Hattrick. That is actually your name. Amazing. Hat-trick as in scoring 3 goals in a game of soccer, right? Or any other sport for that matter. I absolutely love my new amp, except it's picking up the radio. I tried power conditioners, ferrite chokes, shielded cables, everything short of building a Faraday cage around that amp. Got any ideas other than learning to play today's top hits? Says Jason Hadrick from Canada. It's not a Mark III boogie by any chance, is it? Or some other kind of boogie? As I understand it, the reason that amps pick up radio frequency is because there's a lot of gain and it becomes an antenna internally. Question 1, is it definitely the amp? Like when you unplug it, is it still picking up Radio Luxembourg? Unplug the guitar, I mean. After that, I don't know. What about if you like move it, twist it? And you've been extremely generous in your super chat, Jason, and I'm afraid I don't know the answer. So if anyone does have an answer, please let Jason know. I had a Mark III boogie that used to do it, and we'd be upstairs in my mate's cottage rehearsing with the band. That sounds weird. They gutted the upstairs to redo it, so there was a great big open space upstairs where we used to rehearse with our band as kids. Paul, hello, if you're listening. And I had a Mark III boogie that did it, that picked up that radio, but it didn't do it all the time. So turn the gain down doesn't help, does it? Anyone got any suggestions? Has anyone got any suggestions for how to stop the radio interference in Jason's amp? Rygor says, hi Mick, do you have any PAF recommendations? My Les Paul Classic has 57 classics in it, great for rock, but too compressed for clean or edge of breakup tones. Yeah, so Rygor, PAF, patent applied for, Gibson's famous humbucker from 1957/58, 57. I know what you mean about 57 classics. I've had them in a couple of guitars, and I want to say they are symmetrically wound and do have a bit of heavier wax pot on them. I want to say that. I don't know that it's true. I think they always sound good in SGs personally, because the SG doesn't have quite as much low mid weight as a Lester does. And I think I had some in a Derek Trucks signature SG, and that guitar sounded cracking. Sounded really great. But I agree with you. They are a bit flat and boring sounding for 335s and Les Pauls. If you want that classic PAF thing, I mean, the obvious answer is to look at burst buckers, maybe 1 and 2s, which are well known to be slightly asymmetrically wound, I think, and much less potted. And then the Gibson custom buckers, I would recommend. I don't even know if you can buy them, but they're in this guitar. I've only ever had 3 guitars that I would vehemently never change the pickups in. This is one of them. And this has Gibson custom buckers. Rosie's barking. Finish that. And it just, I love the sound of this guitar. It doesn't sound as rock as Dan's. What are you barking at, Rosie? Rosie, come here. What are you barking at? Should we check it out? So this Gibson custom buckers, absolutely love them. Now then, a guitar that I did want to change the pickups in was this. My Gibson Memphis ES 1958 ES 335. This had MHS Gibson Memphis Historical Spec pickups, and as good as they were, and they always sounded good in videos, for live it was just a bit too muddy for me and it didn't sit well alongside the Strat. So I bought Lola Imperial underwound humbuckers. I think that's what they're called. They're the sort of lowest output Lola Imperials. Where are you? You're in Europe. Yeah, there's plenty of European pickups you could check out. If Andreas Klopman makes humbuckers, and I think he probably does, buy those. I've got his single coils in one of my Strats, and they're awesome. So if Klopman makes a vintage voiced humbucker. Buy that. I noticed you're in Europe, which is why I'm saying it. Because Klopman is in Germany. And at the moment, the way things are with world trade, it makes sense to buy from your own economic region, I would say, because of tariffs and getting things from the UK to Europe is problematic. It's not impossible, but you will end up paying a bit in. Actually, that said, a lot of you British companies drop the VAT and then it gets added on when you buy it again. But even so, I think it makes sense to buy stuff from your own economic region at the moment. And for that reason, if you can buy from Germany sensibly and easily, Klopman is what I'm going to say. God, that took a long enough time, didn't it? Todd Roy says Monty's PAFs. Absolutely. Monty's from the UK. Matt and George and the team there make stunningly good PAF style pickups. So Monty's, if you fancy that. Yeah. Hopefully that will help. Jason, I can see that you're getting some help about the radio interference, so I hope that's working for you. Yeah. Good. Okay. I think this is the last super chat for tonight, but I will check from Michael Koning, or Michelle Koning, who says, BV has just confirmed Andreas Klopman does make great low wind vintage sounding humbuckers. There you go. Get Klopman's. I finally get volume, says Michelle Koning. I joined a new band and I needed to be louder on stage, so I sold my 18-watt Hughes and Kettner to get a Victory V40D. I can't hide behind compression as much as I feel it's making me a better player. On to wet dry. Yeah, man. We had a fantastic experience day on Friday, Michelle, where a goodly number of the attendees hadn't really played loud much. And fair to say, imagine it. You come here, you're not the most confident guitar player in the world, you don't play loud very much, you're stuck in a room with me and Dan and 6 other people, handed a loud guitar and asked to play loud, right? Sometimes, well, actually, it's only 3 other people, and it's usually only me. But it can be quite intimidating. But within minutes, we get pretty much everybody into a sort of groove and into a happier place and feeling it. You know, we don't plug in 100-watt Marshall and turn it up full and go, there you go, mate, deal with that. It's much more kind of, okay, bring the guitar up. What are you feeling? What can we do? And to a person, they say things to the effect of, oh my God, now I get it. Now I understand what you're banging on about. Oh yeah. You know, it's like, it's revelatory for quite a lot of people, and it sounds like you might be experiencing something similar. And I guess what we say about volume is, it's not about the ultimate SPL. It's not about hitting 110 dB for like 80% of your set. That would be insane, unless you're Angus Young, in which case it wouldn't be bloody loud enough, or Joe Bonamassa. But you know what I mean? The point of having the volume there is so that you can experiment and investigate everything that exists between 85 and 110, and you can use it in your playing, so you don't have to fight so hard the whole time, and so that what you need to say as a guitar player, and I don't mean like you're playing a set of covers and you need to express musically throughout each thing. I mean, when you play a solo, you're loud enough, and when you play the parts in between, you can be heard and with the right tone. So I'm really pleased that you're feeling it, because once you start to feel it, you will become a better guitar player, you will start to play better, and the music will sound better as a result. Nobody wants to hear the guitar player that's just too damn loud all the time. If it's going over the singing, if it's ruining the music, nobody wants to hear that. But equally, we do want to hear you. And when you step forward to play, or you're playing an important part of the song and I'm going, that's equally annoying. So good for you, man. And just do it more and enjoy it more, because it's life-changing, and it will Makes your life better. It just does. It does. Right, let's check the old super chats then, see how we're getting on. I might end a bit early tonight if no one will mind. It's I appreciate having Dan here is slightly more compelling viewing, but yeah, that's all the super chats. Michelle, you're last in. Thank you for all your super chats, everyone. It does help, and it's a big deal for us that you're willing to do that. We're very grateful. Let's have a look then for a few minutes at what's going on in the chat. Yeah, Harrison Henley, I was there. I can vouch for this. Yes, you were, Harrison, and it was great to meet you, buddy, and hear you play. Danielle Williams has been as well. Who else? Michael Giliberto has been. Yeah. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Yeah. Yeah. Scott Broadway says, I rarely catch these streams, so nice to see one. Sorry, Dan wasn't here. Scott. Yeah. Good. Brian Carpenter said, Mick, would it be weird to attend an experience day and not feel comfortable playing? I think it would be sad. We have had people who don't play very much and might have a play and then maybe don't play too much more after that. But what tends to happen, Brian, is no matter what level anyone's playing is at, sometimes I'll just say, okay, if you're... Well, I mean, we tend not to... We don't talk about nerves and stuff like that, because what that tends to do is make people more nervous. What we usually just do is put guitar in someone's hands. And if they're nervous, I'll say something like, play a chord. Just play any chord. Play it and let it sustain. Just one chord. Because even reasonably adept guitar players can feel a bit shrunken in this environment, right? So we try and get over that really quick. And one way we do it is we say, just play one chord. And if you can't play a chord, play one note. And what I'm going to do is make some sound around it. And usually within minutes, even if it's just one chord, the person stops thinking about guitar and playing and being nervous, and they're in it. Because they're usually surrounded by about 100 dB of sonorous noise, reverb, delay, and they're just in it. And the sound, they're leaning on the sound, like Gilmour says, you just lean into it. And it's amazing to watch people relax, for want of a better word, just to go, oh wow. And then it has happened. Ed, I hope you don't mind me saying, Ed Airfire came on one of our first ever experience days, and Ed was really nervous. I hope you don't mind me telling this story, mate. And Ed was a really nervous player, and he had prepared a couple of things that he felt comfortable playing. And he went round and round and round them, and there was a distinct point where we went from Ed was nervous about what he was playing to he was making music. And whatever he was that he was playing, a chord progression and maybe like a melody or something very simple, the switch went on, and he went from being nervous and struggling with the environment a bit to actually making music that the people in the room could all feel. So to answer that's a long way of answering the question, Brian. You could do that, but I'd much rather you played one chord or two notes and you just felt it. Because that, I genuinely believe this, that is equally musical an experience as some virtuoso, playing something. It's like, no, what we're after here is a physical reaction, and we're after a sonorous experience that everybody feels together. So that's what I would be encouraging you to do. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Good. Ciao, Mick, says Cornerstone Music Gear. Hello, Emilio. Hope you enjoyed the show on Friday, if that is you, Emilio. Do you have decaf there, says Johnny T. We do. Or brown sadness water, as Dan calls it. Yeah, we do. We do have decaf. Arf says a hint of rhythm helps. It doesn't matter, you know. Doesn't matter. You can hit a chord, and another thing I like to do is as the chord gets hit, roll on a bit of overdrive. Because remember, I'm driving, right? The person playing the guitar is playing the guitar. I'm driving the pedals and the amps. Roll on a bit of overdrive, and depending on what they play, I kind of know what's going to happen next. So you can dial in a certain kind of overdrive, and we're just getting a bit of feedback. Or I might set a delay to self-oscillate. So you don't actually have to have any rhythm. You can just play and let the thing take off. Yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm eulogizing. I'm quite passionate about it. I'm quite passionate about people having a sonic experience, because it is the opposite of what most of us do most of the time. Yeah. Yep. Okay. We'll finish with Lamar Brewster. Lamar Brewster. I say thanks to everyone for being here. BV, thanks so much for moderating, and thanks for joining us without Dan. Like I said, he was off on some gig rig business and has been delayed. I rather suspect he's having a lot of fun. But that happens sometimes. You know, what he does is really important, right? So, and yeah, thanks everyone for being here and just hanging out. It's a great thing to do on a Monday night. So thank you, or Monday morning, or Monday afternoon, or whatever time it is you're doing this. Lamar Brewster's last question is, Mick, what's the next piece of analog recording gear you have your eye on? Recording gear is a dangerous addiction. Well, don't tell anyone, but I did actually buy an EQ just recently. It was going for very sensible money as a used piece of rack mount gear. It's the Neve 88 series rack mount EQ, like a dual EQ, which is just stupid money, but it was going at a very reasonable price used, so I got that. And you have heard that on the last two episodes, which is like a final thing which I use in the outboard chain at the end when we mix everything. It's not to change anything, it's not to make it fakey or suggest something you're not hearing that you should be. It's just a sweetener. And sometimes I'll do a mix and it'll be like, yeah, that could do with a bit of that or a bit of that, or I need to hear the top of that reverb a bit more, or something like that. And the only reason I ever use any EQ is to get it closer to what I think we were experiencing. Super subtle. Super, super, super subtle. You can add a bit of gain, because one of the things we do is we record really low to make sure we don't get too much digital clipping. So we can add a bit of gain back through that EQ, and really just running through that extra pair of transformers and some other circuitry just is like knits it all together. So that's the next thing. What I want to get after that is some of those Roger Mayer 456 tape emulators. I borrowed some off of Gareth, our friend, and they're really amazing. But and then I've been listening to the Sound on Sound podcast, and lots of people use them. But you've got to stop somewhere. You gotta stop. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to play you out. Normally this is Dan's job. I'll reveal one secret about the Bigsby. One thing I was really worried about is that the end pin wouldn't take a strap anymore. Get it in. It does. Tuning stability is really interesting. Like a lot of guitars, once it's in, it's in. And this guitar's always been a bit funny on the G string. Trev Wilkinson gave me this stuff to put on the nut and saddles years ago. And that really helped. Also got an ever so slightly small rattle. Got the dog barking blues. A dog barking, barking off the wall. Ooh, dog barking, can't hear myself at all. Bit of dog barking blues.